home. After separation, all the right and the wrong, I want to be at the meeting around the throne. After separation, all the right and the wrong, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching home. Trouble will be over, sorrow will be gone, and we'll to be at the meeting around the throne. Listen. When I get to heaven, I'll meet my Father there. They're walking around the throne. When I get to journey, walk journey like a man, unbuckle my sword on my side, stick it in the golden sand. Talk to God the Father, I'll talk to God the Son. We will meet around the throne. Listen, church. When I get to heaven, I'll meet my mother there. She'll say, God Almighty, here come my time. He must got here by prayer. We'll be at home. We sang a brand new song. Then we travel around the throne. Yeah, I want to be at the meeting. I want to be at the meeting. Jesus, I want to be at the meeting around the throne. I want to be at the meeting. I want to be at the meeting. I want to be you did when you went to Calvary. You shed your blood. Oh, you shed it for me. And that's why I'm standing here on your word. 'Cause I know your word will never stand. Oh yeah. Oh, I just want to sing that verse one more time. I couldn't have done what you did when you went to Calvary. You shed your blood. Oh, you shed it. You shed it for me. And I'm standing here on your word. I know your word will forever stand. If I, oh yes I will, could say one word. Oh, yes. I said, if I could just say one word. Oh Lord, I said, you've been so good to me, Father. You've been better to me than I've been to myself. Oh yeah. Lord, you woke me up this morning. You started me on my way. Oh, I thank you, Lord. You've been so good. I thank you, Jesus. You've been so good. I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you. Oh, yes, I'm good. Oh, yeah. I just want to wave my hand, y'all. I just want to thank you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll just wave my hand. Amen. Now the Holy Spirit is as real as God, who came to reside within Jesus Christ's true followers. After Jesus rose from the dead and ascended into heaven, John 14:16 tells us, Jesus told his apostles, I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper, that he may be with you forever, the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it does not behold him nor know him. But you know him because he abides with you, and he will be in you. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. Again, we ask the Father because the Father knows best. We struggle through life trying to figure out what it means to be a responsible man, or what it means to be a responsible adult, wondering whether we have what it takes to be one. Before I go too far into this message, I want to take a moment to personally thank and commend the many hard-working single mothers who have raised children all by themselves. But while a woman can't teach a boy a lot of things, there is one thing she cannot teach. A woman simply can't teach a boy how to become a man. Further, no woman can show a young girl what a husband is like or should be. It takes a man to do that. If fathers are going to make a difference in the lives of their children, they must make their presence known, and they must be heard. The Apostle John says, my sheep hear my voice, I know them, and they follow me. Likewise, children must know the voice of their father. The dads must stay involved in the lives of their children. Don't let the schools be the only place to teach your children. That's right. Don't even let this church be the only place that teach your children. That's right. I am not pointing the finger at the teaching ministry of the church, but parents, the church is not responsible for raising your kids. That's right. The church will help you, but when the Bible tells us to train up a child in the way it should go, and when they are old, they will not turn from it. It is not the church that this statement is directed to. It is the parents that this scripture is speaking to. Well, what kind of men are we? What motivates us? What inspires us? What encourages us? And what stirs us up? Let's briefly look at some familiar TV shows that illustrate the fathers in prominent roles. In 1954, there was a TV show called The Father Knows Best. It starred Robert Young, I'm dating myself, as Jim Anderson, Jane Wyatt as his wife, Margaret. It was about a typical middle-class white family growing up in white America. Jim was a salesman and manager of General Insurance Company in Springfield, while his wife, Margaret, was a housewife. They had 3 kids. They lived in a pretty little house with a pretty little picket fence. They drove a pretty little white car. The reason I know that because we had a black and white TV. So the car was not black, it had to be white. Amen. Amen. This show may have somewhat been realistic to them, but it did not show the image of a perfect father. In the 1980s, there was a TV series called The Cosby Show. That starred Bill Cosby and Felicia Rashad, which I will not go any further. The show focused on the Huxtable family, an upper middle class African-American family living in a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, New York. The father was Cliff Huxtable, an obstetrician. The mother of his wife was attorney Claire Huxtable, and they had 3 kids. Then the show attempted to show what life was in the normal black family. The Huxtables went to prestigious schools, and the kids dressed well and they spoke proper English. This show was a little bit more realistic to us, but yet and still it did not accurately show the image of a perfect father. About 10 years earlier, though, there was another TV show that aired in the 70s. This show was opposite of the Cosby Show. This show was called Good Times, which it was everything but a good time. It starred John Amos, who played James Evans, and Esther Rolle, Florida, with J.J., Thelma, and Michael. The family lived in Chicago. They were a blue-collar family. James worked as a construction worker, and Florida as a housekeeper. They lived in a low-income, high-rise apartment on the south side. The kids went to a neighborhood school, and they could barely make ends meet. While this show attempted to depict the normal, everyday life of the black family, it just didn't show what a perfect father could be. Now, if you want to know what a perfect father looks like, just look at John 3:16. And it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but shall have everlasting life." No earthly father or mother would sacrifice any of their children, no matter what the reason may be. Fathers, do you know what is important in your life? If not, just look at your day planners on your cell phones and see where your time is dedicated. That's what's important. Unfortunately, many fathers say they love their jobs, they love their hobbies, and they love their sports. But you ask them if they love their children, they would tell you, yes, we do. But their time doesn't match up. You see, time is the one gift we give that we can never get back. Time cannot be bought. It can only be spent. You can give money and always make more money. You can give gifts because you can always get new things. But once time is gone, it can never be brought back. Time reveals the priorities in your life. And if you want to win the war for your children, you've got to invest time. We often find ourselves saying, I should have, I ought to have, I could have, or I would have. Men, stay on the job. Don't quit. Men are the chosen of God. We were created in his own image and likeness to serve him. But really, what kind of men are we? My brothers, are we men of courage? The challenges of today's world lay at our feet. The world is full of immorality and corruption. We have kids killing kids. We have carjacking, homes invasions, and all kind of bad things happening in our neighborhoods and communities, and even further in our churches. There is no place that is sacred now to the public. Our churches remain almost empty, especially of black men. I ask you, where are the male soldiers of today? It seems that we are telling ourselves that the church is not beneficial, so why go? Are we men of praise, or do we just sit idly by, doing nothing or saying anything? Instead of being men at work doing the Father's business, we are complacent. We lift our arms in the sports arenas when our favorite team scores. We jump out of our seats and holler as loud as we can. Yet we sit quietly in church and look the other way at the thought of serving a true and living God. Men, are we doubting the power of God? Men, are we men of hope? But how can we carry hope to a world if there is no hope in us? Our outward behavior reveals who we really are. You see, it's what's important on the inside that counts. Yet how can we lose hope when there are signs all around us that hope is still alive? Jesse Jackson said, to keep hope alive. God promised us that Christ shall return for his church. Must we see him physically coming down through the clouds before we believe that there is a God? Are we men of service? Look around you. The women outnumber us in the congregation. Their incredible rise to leadership in the church is a discredit to our God, who called us to care for them and his church. We have left them with no other choice but to pick up the mantle that we have dropped and march on into the battle against the devil. We sit in disdain and contempt of their control while refusing to step to the plate and be counted among the faithful servants. Where is our enthusiasm to assume the role of leadership, husband, father, breadwinner, comforter, and caretaker of God's earthly kingdom? The Apostle Paul tells us this in his letter to the church at Ephesus. Men ought to love their wives as Christ loved the church and gave his life for it. What manner of man are we? What will it take to restore God's divine order to the family, at home, and in the church? Men, it is time for us to stand up and be counted. It is time to go to work. The battle is on, and many of us not have yet reported for duty. God is waiting for us to put on the whole armor of faith and dress for battle. We must not expect the women and the children to go to battle for us. God is waiting for his strong men soldiers, the chosen leaders of this generation, to show up and put on our breastplates of righteousness. He is waiting for us to report in full force to Bible study, Sunday school, and yes, even morning worship service. What manner of men are we? God is calling for his men to man up and go to work. He wants men to be troubled on every side, but are not distressed. Men who may be perplexed, but are not in despair. Men who may be persecuted, but not forsaken. Men who may be cast down, but are not utterly destroyed. You see, his grace is sufficient for us. His strength is perfect through our weakness. God wants to see his men at work. We must be changed into his image. We must be men who shatter the darkness of despair with our message of hope. We must be men who will break loose the chains of doubt and have us weighed down and allow Christ to reshape our future. You see, the Father knows best. It is time to embrace the spiritual passion without hesitation. But we cannot change the world if the world has not changed in us. They say you can take the man out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the man. If you choose to remain in a sin-dominated world, we will have no power against the darkness of sin. For light must penetrate darkness. No strongholds can be broken in battle until we first break the strongholds within our own lives. Strongholds like drugs, cheating, lying, and gambling. Holiness does more to keep our bodies clean. It overcomes the sludge that slows the flow of divine grace through us, and it breaks the snares set by Satan that can overtake our readiness for spiritual warfare. You see, God needs warriors, men and women, who are ready for more than just eating and drinking and being merry. God needs people who will go to battle to save the lost. Men and women who will battle for the equality of the world. Men and women who will reach out to the economically deprived. Men and women who will continue to walk in this millennium as children of God in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation. Men and women who will store family values and provide for their children. Men and women who are not conformed to the pattern of this world, but are transformed by the renewing of their mind. Then you will be able to prove and test what God's pleasing and perfect will is. Men and women who will broaden their boundaries, reach out to the poor and sick, the widowed and the forgotten. Men and women who tithe and take care of their homes and families. We are walking in the Spirit, or we just stumbling down some lonely, dark, and rocky path, going nowhere. Are we spending time in prayer? Are we just spending time in idle thought? Don't you see, God is calling all people, especially the men. He is calling us out of the dark alleys that embrace our homeless and lost generations. He's calling us from the veins of a young teenager about to try drugs for the first time. He's calling us from the courtrooms of injustice. He's calling us from the wreckage of broken homes. He's calling us through the victims of neglect. And he's calling us through the mess of our own mistakes. Will we answer with, Lord, here am I, send me? Or will we just run the other way? Use me, Lord, in thy service. Take us to Calvary's cross, for you will revive us again. Take us to Calvary's cross and turn us into warriors, fit for battle against despair, discouragement, and demons of this world. Take us to Calvary's cross and turn us into warriors fit for battle against frustration, fear, and failure. Take us to Calvary's cross and turn us into warriors fit for battle against shame, suffering, and sadness. Take us to Calvary's cross and turn us into warriors fit for the battle against the heartaches, habitats, and hopelessness. I wanted to save the best for the last, though. In verse 9 of the scripture begins a lesson that is good and familiar to each and every one of us. And it says, after this manner, therefore, pray ye, our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. And forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. You see, I've learned to pray in and out of season, at any time and for any reason. Prayer is the key. Faith unlocks the door. Ask anything and it shall be done. He will hear every word you say. While you call him, he's on his way. I tell you, prayer will fix it every time. Men, I want you to know that it's not about putting the spotlight on you. It's about putting the spotlight on the Father. It ought not be about how many trophies or accolades we have won. It should be about putting the spotlight on the Father. It ought not be about the kind of clothes we wear, but it should be about putting the spotlight on the Father. It should not be about the fancy car that we drive or the fancy homes that we live in, but it should be about putting the spotlight on the Father. Don't you know the Father that loves you unconditionally? Don't you know that it's the Father that keeps clothes on your back? Don't you know that it's the Father that keeps food on your table? Don't you know that it's the Father that puts money in your pocket when your pocket is empty? Don't you know that it's the Father that put money in your bank account when you go to get money out of the bank and there ain't nothing there, but all of a sudden it appears? See, the Father knows best. Don't you know that the Father keeps you out of harm's way? It's the Father that keeps our children out of harm's way. It's the Father that walks with us and talks with us and tells us that we are his own. Don't you know that the Father knows best? Amen. Amen. Won't you stand on your feet? I am on the battlefield. My Lord. I am on the battlefield for my Lord.
It's prayer time, church. Now is the time to come for prayer.